Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers, my co-host as usual, for now 351 episodes into this thing in a partnership. So thanks for that, Keith. Welcome into the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's football weekend. College football's week one is already come and gone. For those of you that are fans of West Coast teams, it was not a great weekend, but the NFL week one is now here, and it's not going to be a great weekend for Seahawks fans either. I don't believe it's not going to be as much fun as we're used to from previous seasons.
And we get to wait till the very end to find out how the Seahawks open up the season.
Yeah, because proof that the NFL has a sense of humor. The Seahawks face Russell Wilson and his new team, the Denver Broncos, week one on Monday Night Football, prime time with everybody watching.
Yeah. Nice. Fun. Pete Carroll said, thank you, NFL. I think he actually meant it, but in reality, it could be a bloodbath, or the Seahawks come up and surprise. It's one of those things. Opening game. Both teams, one team could be way more ready than the other team. That could be the Seahawks. I don't think it is, but it could be. And it would be a little bit of a shocker, and you'd kind of have to almost reevaluate a little bit, especially if Seahawks came out and had a great showing and had some turnovers, and it was just it was chaotic for Wilson. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. Wilson's got a lot of motivation to come in and spank his old team and his old coach. And, I just don't know how good their roster is overall around him. We're going to find out. So speaking of the schedule, this is our 6th annual regular season prediction show, Keith. And so we've both come in fully prepared, I'm sure, to talk about all these games and opponents. And we're going to go through the schedule, and we're going to come up with our wins and losses, as we've done every year. We're going to compare notes, find out where we sit at the end of this thing, and see if we can create a better team on paper, or if it's going to be about how we think it's going to be in reality. So how do you want to get started with this thing?
Well, we're going to, for those of you that are new to this, with the way we do is we go game by game, and we declare wins and losses based on our prediction, how we think the Seattle's roster pairs up, and things like home field advantage and all of that. I will tell you that I am overly optimistic in that I have them winning every single game that I believe is winnable. It's still not a good season by any means. It's still a terrible season.
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile this, because when you do go through game by game and you really do analyze the teams that the Seahawks are facing, when they're facing them within the season, the road games and so forth, you just kind of add it all up, and it just doesn't add up. You want to kind of be favorable to your team and give them the benefit of the doubt and the bounce of the ball. And even with all those things accounted for, it still is challenging. And I think this show will kind of show that. We'll still be favorable when we can be, but it is kind of a rough deal. So I've got a spreadsheet ready to go to for those that want to stick around, and our YouTube watchers at the end of the show will reveal our overall wins and losses on a graph, if you want to have that, and I'll post that eventually on Twitter. So Broncos at the Seahawks, week one, September 12th, Monday Night Football. You talked about it. I'll just throw it out. I've got it as a loss, because
this is going to be a bloodbath. I think Seattle's going to get. I don't think this game's going to be close. Seattle's going to get killed.
Why do you think that?
I think that because what happens week one is how the playoff games are just more intense and more just like, especially the defenses, they're just really more geared up and all of that. Week 1 is very similar because guys are tired of hitting their teammates. They want to go out and hit someone. And in the preseason, they don't get to play a lot. The people who are actually on the field in this week 1 game have only played, a handful of snaps over the preseason. So they're ready to go out and just kill people. And so there's just a violence to the game in week 1, a ferocity that the other games don't tend to have. And honestly, Seattle's overmatched. They're in over their head in this one. Wilson's going to come out and he's going to run around and do Russell Wilson things. They've got rookie corners that if Wilson can run around in circles, give his receivers 5 or 6 seconds to get open, they're going to get open. And even especially against rookie corners, Seattle's got rookie offensive tackles. And so you're going to see Denver's pass rushers get through because, well, they're rookies and they're going to make, there's going to be growing pains. They're going to make mistakes. And having this game be week 1, I just don't think this is they would probably lose this game no matter when they played it, assuming, health and all of that stays equal. But week 1, I don't like this matchup at all.
It's interesting, the way that you frame that, and I tend to agree. I think it does come down to some sort of composure, if you will, if that's attainable in an NFL game, where you ride out the first wave of the ferocity, as you said, probably at least a quarter, if not, the first half is just going to be back and forth, a lot of punts, some miscues, maybe some big plays, and at the end of the day, it's the team that kind of rallies and comes around composure wise. And Russell Wilson's got all that experience, and that could very well be the difference in this game. Yeah, I tend to see it that way. Basically, as you played it out, you're dealing with a bunch of rookies here, young players. That's great in the long term for Seattle, but first game out with all these guys in a cohesive unit. It's going to be a big challenge, and Pete Carroll will have him as ready as he can, but nonetheless, I think it comes up short. So I've got it as a loss. You've got it as a loss. I'm going to write that in.
So week 2, they go on the road to San Francisco. I have this as a loss here as well, but I will say that the Trey Lance experiment is still an experiment. And there seems to be a lot of caution out there within the national media about him and this team because of him. So it is possible that Seahawks could go on the road and surprise San Francisco if Trey Lance makes a bunch of mistakes and either, turns the ball over or misses some what should have been easy third down conversions and that kind of stuff. Seattle could pull that one out. So whereas the first one, I think they get slaughtered. In this one, I have it as a loss, but I have it as a very close loss.
Yeah, that's again a great way to put it. And if you're really optimistic as a fan and a guy that covers the team, you could kind of show this as a possible win. The only thing that doesn't really favor the Seahawks in this is it is on the road, but there's a lot of punditry out there in the national media that is really giving the 49ers maybe some of the best chances to emerge out of the NFC West this year, to be in contention for the NFC title game. And they've got a really decent roster. It really does all hinge on Trey Lance and how that experiment goes. Most people think it's going to turn out favorably, but you just never know. And they've got a little quarterback controversy there built in, because if Trey Lance falters at all, maybe they start the year 1 and 3 or something like that. All of a sudden, you're going to start to hear the Garoppolo thing going again, including within the team, and that can tear that thing apart. And so we'll just have to see.
I think it was a mistake for them to keep Garoppolo, and not just because him coming to Seattle would have given them like 3 more wins. But
right.
what you're just saying, it sets it up. if Trey Lance struggles at all at any point, you're gonna start getting rumblings. Why is Garoppolo not playing? They won. They made it to an NFC title game with Garoppolo, right?
Absolutely. And they have a strong roster around them.
They do.
They're ready.
Really
they're ready to win. Same thing can be said as far as the quarterback controversy with the Seahawks, although I don't think that we're quite ready yet to assume any playoff standing at all. But you still might have calls if Geno starts the year 1-3 or 1-4. There will be calls to have Drew Lock come in and at least show what he can do.
Because if you start the year, you and I have them both starting 0-2, right? So if it gets much worse going forward, at some point, this season is over. Geno at 34 isn't getting it done.
I'll tell you when it happens.
See what Drew Lock has. You have to.
I'll tell you when I think it happens. If we start the year 0-2 and then we happen to fall to the Falcons at home in week 3, which I currently have them as being the first win of the season. I think you probably do too. If they lose that game and it's somehow attributed to Geno Smith's play, that could be a turning point to watch for. I'm not going to say it's going to happen. I'm just going to say that's the point where you're going to start to hear stuff.
Yeah, that's when the fans are going to be like, make the switch. You got to do it now. Do it now. Save the season. Blah blah blah. At least give them a chance. You're going to hear it strongly if they lose. If they go 0-3 and with a loss to Atlanta, a team that's just in a rebuild, that traded their quarterback and their best receiver in the last 2 years, that signed Marcus Mariota, who kind of failed as a starter in Tennessee, spent the last couple of years as a backup in Vegas, and now is getting a chance to start again. Like, if you lose that game, and especially if it's because of bad play by Geno Smith, it won't just be rumblings. It'll be loud.
Yeah,
I have that game as a win, though. It's at home. They are in the middle of they're actually at the beginnings of a rebuild. I think Seattle's further along in roster development. I think both teams have serious quarterback problems. But
overall they have a better offense, I think.
I don't know. I like
better offense than their defense. Their defense really is horrible.
The defense is bad, and I like Mariota more than I like Geno Smith. But at the same time, I like Seattle's talent around their quarterback much more than I like Atlanta's, especially on defense. Atlanta doesn't have a defense. Like, Seattle's offense is bad, but Atlanta's defense is worse. And so Seattle's actually going to have some offensive success against Atlanta. And I could see that being a way, that's just how I see them, pulling out a win there.
The next game is interesting because I think this is maybe the inflection point where you and I differ slightly. This game and maybe a later game in the season, but I've got them losing on the road to the Lions against Dan resurgent Lions team. And I'm just really curious as to see how you feel about this game.
I have this as a win, and if I go through and look, it might be my only road win of the year. It is. And I have it as a win because I don't trust Jared Goff. And as much as I don't trust Geno Smith, I trust Jared Goff less. I also like Seattle's talent around their quarterback more than I like Detroit's. Now, Detroit's got some nice pieces. They're a better team than people think because, you're used to the Lions. They're a bottom feeder, right? They're awful. I think they make a run after the Seattle game where they start stringing together, a couple of wins here, a couple of wins there, and end up doing okay. But this point in the season is where I see Seattle being able to pull one out on the road against Detroit because Jared Goff's not going to win you a game. He's just not going to go out and do what's required to win. And so it's, as far as quarterbacks go, the two teams are equal. Geno and Goff are the same guy. I mean, Goff's just younger, but they're both terrible. I like.
We saw this. Go ahead.
I like the rest of Seattle's roster better.
We saw the disparity in talent last year. The Lions were a fighting team, though. Dan Campbell's got them ready to work hard and to be in games.
they're significantly better roster-wise this year than last year. I still just think Seattle's overall roster talent is better. And that's why I gave them the win, but it is on the road. And
I mean, that was the tipping. That was the tipping for me. And this could have gone either way. And I was early in my in the schedule and in looking at my wins and losses, and I looked at this game as being one of those games that was a letdown game. You just won at home against the Falcons. You go on the road at 10 a.m. the next week, and you lose to a team you maybe should have beat, which gives you a larger picture as to where you really stand with your roster and with your season. And I thought that was one of these games. And again, these are Bill and Keith predictions. These things can go either way, but I saw it as a loss. So
I've got them 2-2 at this point. You've got them
1-3 and looking like it's going to be a long season.
2-2. They've won 2 straight. They've won 1 on the road. They beat Atlanta at home. People are starting, in my world, to, feel positive. Maybe the season's not going to be as bad as it could be.
Then they hit a brutal stretch of games.
But the wheels fall off right after Detroit, in my world, because the next game is at New Orleans. And as much as Jameis Winston is not the superstar that people thought he was when he was drafted first overall, he's far better than Gina, and that roster is good, and that they're ready. They're a surprising pick by a lot of former NFL players that are now pundits, guys like Keyshawn Johnson and Bart Scott, to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. That's how positive a lot of people are looking at that team.
And honestly, this is a defense-oriented team. I mean, it really is.
It is. It's a defensive-oriented team now. And they're going to win with defense. They're going to run the ball well. They're going to ask Jameis to do Jameis things only a little bit. Don't turn the ball over.
Yeah, that could be their downfall.
It could be
a little bit of a slinger, including in this game. The Seahawks are going to be a little bit more ball hockey, I think, in this season. And this could be one of those games where they could generate some turnovers because Jameis Winston, if you pressure him a little bit, he can get a little erratic. That might be the hope here.
I've got him. I've got this as a loss. How about you?
Okay, I do too. Yeah. So Cardinals at Seahawks on October 16th. This is one of those deals where you just look at the Cardinals' regular season schedule and record in the last couple of years, and you just almost assign this as a win because they beat the Seahawks in Seattle, and we seem to do better with them on the road. And this is early enough in the season where the Cardinals are pretty much on top of their game, and Murphy's in the MVP hunt again, and he slings it all over the field on the Seahawks on this one, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got this as a loss. Playing Arizona early in the year you're going to lose. Playing Arizona late in the year means they're going to be awful. And until they switch their coaching staff to one that's competent, that's the way it's going to be. And so this is early enough in the year. I expect, Murray's going to look good. He's still going to be in the MVP hunt, and this is going to go down as a loss. And
as it turns out, we play him, twice in 4-week period here.
Yep.
So, okay. Seahawks at the Chargers. What an exciting game. To me, this would be an exciting game if we were in contention because of Justin Herbert and the emerging Charger team, both defensively and especially on offense. It's just too much firepower for the Seahawks. It's one of those things where I think the Seahawks could have potentially a top 10 defense if they had a top 10 offense. If Seattle were to have a top 10 offense that could sustain drives, convert third downs, keep the defense off the field, I think Seattle would be, would be up there. But I think it's going to be a long season for this defense because the offense just won't be able to sustain anything. And so when that happens, I think teams like the Chargers are primed and ready to take advantage of that.
Oh yeah, the Chargers are a legit contender. for a Super Bowl title.
It's kind of like the West
because
Coast version of Buffalo. I mean, it's like they're supercharged.
they've got supercharged. Nice pun for the Chargers. The Chargers have talent up and down the roster. They are by far the better team, and that's an easy loss. So the following week, though, the Seahawks come home to play a Giants team that is rebuilding despite the fact they never built. So does it count as rebuilding if you never built anything to begin with? You know what I mean?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway here is that the head coaching change and just kind of heading in a different direction with the general manager, and that takes a little while. But they drafted well this year, both Evan Neal and quite a few different players. Kayvon Thibodeau, although he might be ailing, we'll have to monitor that. But they've got some nice young talent. It's just going to take a while. It's just one of those deals where they're talent poor, and we don't know exactly what Brian DeBall is gonna do with this defense and so forth. So I'll be very curious as to see how this team does. But I do have this as being one of the Seahawks wins this year, and it seems to be the one that's almost the easiest one to predict.
Yeah, Daniel Jones has an opportunity this year to prove that he is a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he rises to that challenge.
Wow.
And I think that this becomes an opportunity for Seattle's defense to get some turnovers. And I have Seattle winning this game. And it's somewhat unfortunate for that particular win, because at this point they will have beaten, according to me, they will have beaten Atlanta and the Giants, which puts them behind in the tiebreaker to two different teams that are going to want to draft a quarterback in next year's draft.
Yeah.
So
the Falcons, Lions, Giants could all use a quarterback long term. I've got as a win. All right, so Seahawks at Cardinals. Just faced them 3 weeks prior. Here we are again in the desert, November 6th. I've got it down as another loss, just because go ahead.
Oh, go you go finish.
Yeah, I just think that the Seahawks are just overmatched. They've got a better roster. I thought the Cardinals did an okay job. It seemed like they just kind of held in place, but the Seahawks dropped their franchise quarterback in the offseason, and they just don't have an answer. Last year, it was all about Russell Wilson and Rashad Penny in that game at the end of the year, and now we're minus Wilson, and I just don't know that we have really an answer to kind of keep up with their offense.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona's offense is going to struggle a little bit because, they're without their best receiver, Nuke Hopkins, who's been suspended. They don't have. They're
He's back for this game though. Hopkins is back for this game.
Is he back already by that point?
He's back for the November 6th game. Yeah.
Okay. So, but still, I think that they aren't a team that I believe is going to be in contention down the stretch. And that's not just, they do start fast and finish slow. That's that's that team's, thing. This game is early enough in the season, even though it's the second time Seattle has played Arizona. There's still a lot of football to be played after this. This is where the Arizona swoon and where the wheels have fallen off and they start to really struggle hasn't yet started. And so I have this as a loss for Seattle.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much spot on. So things get really go ahead.
I was just saying the same thing. Things are starting at that game. This is a 4-game stretch after the Giants. That is rough. It is really rough. Because the next week after that one is at Tampa Bay,
which is actually in Germany.
Oh, that's right. It's a road game. It counts as a road game. It doesn't, Seahawks didn't lose a home game for it, but you're right. It's in Germany. But it doesn't matter. As far as that stuff goes, Tampa's a Super Bowl contender.
Yep.
And Seattle is a first overall pick contender. That's an easy loss to me.
Yeah, same. It's on the road, 6:30 a.m. start time, Pacific Coast, and you know, I think this team goes in and has fun. This is where the team kind of looks at its wins and losses and realizes it's already out of playoff contention. It's going to be a long season, but this is one of those games where the team kind of turns loose, gets loose, plays loose, nothing to lose, and just goes and has fun. They still lose this game just by a more talented roster, but you can see that I think that they start to have a little bit of fun and let things go a little bit. Following that game, then you've got a bye week. I think the chatter really starts in earnest about Seahawks playoff hopes are over. What's going on with Pete Carroll? What's going on with quarterback position? Look forward to the 2023 NFL draft. Yep. That sort of conversation now starts in earnest by what would be November 21st.
Yep. So we are 10 games into the season. I have them at 3-7, and you have them at 2-8.
I do. And I've got another 2 losses coming up.
So do I.
Out of the bye.
Yep. Come out of the bye at home against Vegas. Another team that made the playoffs last year and then added a ton of talent.
And we earlier, Keith, we had talked about the Broncos as being a team that's just going to overmatch Seattle in that first game. I kid you not. I'm looking at the Broncos as being the 4th best team in that division. And here we are facing the Raiders in week 12. And it's actually a better team, I think.
Yeah. And the Chargers they've already faced and lost is a better team. I think you undersell Denver a little bit, but we'll see as the season goes on. But overall, I mean, point taken, right? Denver might finish 4th in this division. The Vegas Raiders might finish 4th in that division. They're still going to slaughter Seattle.
Yeah.
They're just far better talent wise. As far as
they'd be no worse than second in our division, I think.
Yeah.
In fact, the entire power shift from the NFC to the AFC is complete, and you don't have to look any further than this. I mean, there's probably at least I'm going to say at least 10 teams in the AFC that are vying for playoff spots that are legitimately better than any NFC team, really. I mean, it's just there's a few NFC teams, but okay. Panthers at Seahawks, December 11th.
You skipped the Rams.
I did. I skipped the Rams. Seahawks at Rams, December 4th. I've also got it down as a loss as well. It's on the road against the best team in the NFC.
Yep, same.
Okay, so Panthers at Seahawks. I've got it as a win. Panthers are kind of one of those teams that you look at the schedule and you're going, I've got the Seahawks winning every winnable game. You mentioned that. This is, to me, one of those winnable games. So
I agree. I also have this as a win. And again, I look at this and I go, yeah, they win. And by winning, they lose. Because with Carolina, they don't have a quarterback either. And Sam Darnold's not the guy. Baker Mayfield, you're going to learn this year, is not the guy. They're going to be wanting a new quarterback. And you win this game and you hurt your chances at getting one of the 3 elite quarterbacks that are coming out of the draft.
Yes and no, Keith. It depends on the way you look at it. I mean, you've also got to look at these individual teams and what their records might be heading into this game and so forth. And I don't think the Panthers are going to be below the Seahawks at this point.
No.
Or if you go,
look at the
Giants could be, the Lions, I think, are going to be ahead of the Seahawks at this point and so forth. Yeah, you're right. No, every win at this point is kind of sketchy because now you're thinking, well, you're talking about position in the draft, and that's a really difficult thing to navigate for a team that's losing. It's going to have a losing season. That's all they're pining on is getting a franchise quarterback. So these wins are consequential. But you're not going to tell your franchise, and you're not going to have Pete Carroll go out and try to lose games. It's just
not at all. They're going to try and win.
So it's tough.
But Carolina is a beatable team. I mean, they are. I mean, they got better when they traded for Baker Mayfield, but they got marginally better when they traded for Baker Mayfield. Overall, I'm not super impressed with their roster. at all. I think they're a couple of years away from contending with anything, even if Baker Mayfield turns around and proves a lot of people wrong, including me, and really plays well and shows that he's a starting quarterback in this league, they're still a couple of years away. So they're a beatable team, and I've got Seattle winning that game as well.
Yeah, Matt Rule be the coach there. I think he'll do a good job eventually. 49ers at Seahawks on Amazon Prime Thursday, 5:15 p.m. That's interesting. I got a question for you. Is that game a possibility to be flexed? I don't know if the Amazon Prime games are flexible or
I don't think so, because they're Thursday games, and that's the flex games tend to be Sunday night games. Although there's some potential for flexing Monday games this year, requirements for are hard to hit. I think this one's going to stay a Thursday night game because every NFL team has a Thursday night game. That's one of the things they went to a couple of years ago, is that every team has one. And so this will be Seattle and San Francisco's game. These short games where you have 4 days between games, you can't game plan for them. You have to just go in and do what you do best. It tends to lean on whichever is the more talented team. You can't win with coaching in these games. You have to just be better than the other team across from you. San Francisco's roster is really good. No matter what Trey Lance is doing or Jimmy Garoppolo or who's playing quarterback, the rest of their roster is better than Seattle.
Yeah, as long as they're healthy this time of the year, they do have a better roster for sure. It'll come down to, who's in sync, who's playing really well at this time of the year. If the 49ers are winning and the Seahawks are losing, I think the momentum is definitely going to favor the 49ers in this. I do have it down as a win, though. And the reason that I had that as a win, and you had the Lions as a win and I had it as a loss. This is where we differed on our schedules, is that there's always a game. There's just always seems to be a game in the year where a team rises up and beats a better team. And I think this is it. This is
what game was that last year? Was it the Arizona game at the end of the year?
Yeah, that's probably it, right? Because Arizona's in a playoff hunt for sure. They had something on the line to play for, and Seahawks went and whipped them, which is somewhat unexpected, I would say. But yeah, this would be the game for me that the Seahawks go in and do that, to the disappointment of those who wish that they could lose to get better draft position. They go out and take care of business in this one.
I don't know. There's something about beating San Francisco that's worth, dropping a couple spots in draft position.
I agree. And if you go look historically, we've really socked it to them the last 10 years.
Okay. After that, they're playing.
So you have that as a loss.
I have that as a loss.
Okay.
After that, they go on the road in Kansas City.
I know the answer, Keith.
In a very lopsided game.
Yes.
Kansas City picks up an easy win.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Jets at Seahawks. This is another one of those winnable games. Seahawks should be able to take care of. And I've got it down as a win as well. So I've got them winning 3 out of these last 4 games on this schedule. At least I do.
Oh yeah, because Carolina, San Francisco, then a loss, then a win against the Jets. That's a nice stretch for them at the end of the season to kind of hang their hats on.
Get respectable.
We're getting better.
Yes.
And we're going to be doing well. I have this as a win, but this was actually one of those games that I thought about flopping and switching it to a loss, because the Jets, we're used to the Jets being the Jets. They're not going to be as bad this year,
especially at the end of the year.
They're really young, but they're more talented now. They've got some good people,
well coached.
They're well coached, and I think that they're going to improve as the year goes on, and you're going to see them playing pretty good football at the end of the year. And yeah, I mean,
exactly. I agree.
That's going to be that's going to be a harder game than I think people think, because the Jets will be better, but I still have Seattle winning that.
This is a point in the schedule where I think both of us could overthink things a little bit, and just kind of trying to figure out a way to get to a certain number. So, for the schedule, because I think you could get to 4 wins if you were being brutally honest and not optimistic, just neutral, looking at this schedule. I think you could potentially get to 7 wins on the other end of the spectrum if you were manufacturing wins against evenly matched teams, or maybe a home game that you could sway it slightly. But
yeah,
it's just hard. It is hard. And when you say I could have gone to a loss here, yeah, and that would have, well, I'll let you decide how you want to present your final win total. But I just gave it to him because right now in early September, it looks like a win. And it might be adjusted later on, just based on the fact that the Jets might be improving, the Seahawks might be completely tanking. You just don't know. All right, Rams at Seahawks, Keith.
The Rams will be fighting San Francisco for the division title, and even if they aren't, they'll be fighting for the first overall, pick, or playoff seeding, that kind of stuff. The Rams are they're not going to come out and lay an egg on here. And they are the more talented team. So I've got that as a loss.
I do too. So you want to add them up for me? I can just add them up for you.
You and I both have us at 5-12.
5-12.
The difference being I've got a win versus Detroit where you've got a loss, and you've got a win versus San Francisco late in the year where I have them as a loss. Those are the only differences. We both have them at 5-12, and that puts them.
There's
Yep.
There's the deal.
That puts the Seahawks in line for a top 5 draft pick, which should get them a quarterback. Because I was thinking about this when I was putting this together, and I got to the end, and I was like, okay, who are they competing with for this draft position? And we have Arizona and Detroit and the Giants. And I just went through all the teams, and I'm like, the truth is, I said Arizona. I did not mean Arizona. I meant Atlanta. The truth is that if Jacksonville's there, they feel they've got their quarterback. If the Jets are in that, they feel they've got their quarterback, right? And so a top 5 pick, when you've got a couple of teams that already feel like they've got your quarterback in there, puts you in line to get a quarterback in the draft. Because
yes,
I still think there's 3 elite quarterbacks in this draft class, and we'll see if someone else, comes up and plays their way into.
That kid from Florida had a great game.
He did.
He could play into the conversation. But at 5-12 last year, the Panthers were the 5-12 team in the draft, and they picked 6 overall. So you're taking a look at a 4, 5, 6, 7 draft spot. That's plus we've got a second first round pick as well as 2 seconds as well. So we do have maneuverability. Plus you can always use a future. So we can go up and get the guy we want, really, for the most part. Top 3, top 2, first or second pick overall, depending on how they evaluate and so forth. So it'll be very interesting. The offseason will be. But for now, what do you think about the schedule? What do you think about how this is going to play out? The roster seems to be moving in the right direction, Keith, but this is a lot to overcome.
Yeah, the schedule is rough because they play the AFC West, which is the best of it. There's 4 really good teams in that
absolutely,
division.
Keith.
So that's hard.
And our own division.
And they're our own division. And so between those 2, right, that's 10 games of your schedule that come out against just really, really good football teams. That's hard to overcome when you're in the middle of a rebuild and you don't have a quarterback.
Yeah. I was looking at our own division, and there's potentially 6-10 losses right there. You could lose every game in your division, really. All 3 teams are better
Yep.
In front of us. The
And then,
only saving grace is we play them twice, and some of those are at home, and so you kind of slide those things over a little bit into the win column. At least I did twice, so I would 2 and 4 in our own division to get to 5 wins overall. And I lost every one of those AFC West contests, and obviously,
yeah, I have them going 0-10 in those games.
Wow. Yes, you did, didn't you?
I don't have them winning, having a single division win or one against. And so you go 0-10 in those games. And then you think about it, like, okay, there's 7 games left. I have them going 5-2 in the other 7 games. So I guess the schedule doesn't do Seattle any favors as far as them winning games. It also does them a lot of favors as far as the future of this team and getting a quarterback. So, yeah, being able to, and so, okay, so not only those 10 games, but then you also look at Tampa Bay and New Orleans are also on their schedule.
Yeah.
Right. 2 other teams that are probably going to be in the playoffs. That's 12.
Yeah.
Right. And I have them winning the other 5
That's exactly
games.
right. That's exactly the way I kind of looked at it. Although I did kind of play around with that Lions and 49ers game. I saw it pretty much like you did as well. It's just it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to win, and I say that as a guy that's been talking for the last 3 months about how close I think this is. This is the NFL. You are going to be in games. Pete Carroll's the coach. He's going to have a well-coached defense. He's going to be more ball hockey and aggressive this year, so we could generate some turnovers that kind of gives teams an opportunity to win close games at the end. But do you have the quarterback that is going to be able to win those close games for you if you're behind, or protect the lead by sustaining drives? And we do have a running game that we could potentially sustain some drives, but it's unproven at this point. But I don't know that we can go out and win games if we're down by 3 or 10 or 2 or 5 with 3 minutes left, and you put the ball in Gino's hands.
It's a loss.
It's a 50-50 proposition at best. Now, when you did that with Russell Wilson, it was 75-25. And so realistic, just trying to be realistic. I know people support Gino. We will support Gino. But just being realistic as far as the play on the field is concerned and how it affects the record, I think that you and I have done about where we think we're going to be. It's going to be somewhere between 4 and 7 wins, depending on how it bounces. And that's really optimistic, I think, after seeing the preseason.
I don't see 7 wins as a possibility on the schedule. I could get to 6 because I think that you're right. A win over Arizona or San Francisco at some point. One of those 2, you could say maybe.
You could possibly beat the Broncos out of the gate. That might tip the scales. And just go up and sneak one. Just go up and get one early in the year before everyone's ready and generate a turnover. Maybe you sack him a couple times. It's just one of those deals where it could happen. I give it maybe a 20% chance, but there's a 20% chance, and I can't say that about all the other games on the schedule. But the Broncos game, the first game, I think there's a chance that you could create a win there. And then if you take a 49er game, you take a Cardinal game, that gets you to 7.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's all I'm saying is you could get there, but
I don't think they're close to Denver.
It's hard,
especially not early in the season. When
there are a number of fans that disagree with us, like just completely disagree with us, and some pundits that say our defense is going to be better than advertised. We're going to generate turnovers. The running game is going to be better than we're thinking it is, just because we haven't seen Penny in the preseason, and Ken Walker, we haven't seen him, and this thing could really end up being dynamic. Gino could end up being a placeholder where he just throws the ball, dumps off, and yards after catch goes way up, and we somehow convert 3rd down. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you'd have to stack so many of these. Well, if this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. If you stack all of them up, you can get to 7 wins. Any of those things fall short, which is more likely.
Yeah.
You fall short of that. And so that's where I'm at.
There's a range of outcomes, right? And if every single one of these different things that you just mentioned falls in the Seattle's favor on the range of outcomes, you get to 6 or 7 wins. But not everything is going to fall in Seattle's favor. You're not going to get every single thing to fall in line. And honestly, I have us at 5. I feel better about 4. 4 seems more realistic than 5, given the schedule, because I don't think you go through and win every single game that's winnable.
Yeah.
Because that is saying that you aren't going to make the mistake, that you're not going to have, a receiver put the ball on the ground, or, you're going to catch those interceptions, that kind of stuff. You don't have a game where Jason Myers misses 2 kicks. That's how you get to 5 wins. You have to have those things happen. And if you have one of those bad situations that I just mentioned, now you're at 4.
So this was always the play, wasn't it, Keith?
It is.
Go through this painful year with a younger but exciting roster that's got oozing potential, but you're missing the piece that is most needed to elevate you over the top. And so the Seahawks long play, they could have solved or temporarily solved the cornerback position a couple of different ways. The Baker Mayfield thing comes to mind, Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously. But they went and they didn't draft anybody. So you go through that process, Gino and Drew, those were the choices going into the evaluation. And so it always seemed to me that was slightly less than optimal if your sole purpose was winning. But I think the sole purpose isn't winning. The sole purpose is building a foundational roster that is ready to win when that final piece comes, and it's just not here yet.
Yep. This year is not about wins and losses. It really isn't. It's about developing the talent that's here. It's about getting Abe Lucas and Charles Cross up to speed in the NFL and getting them, those game reps, because a year from now, they're both going to be elite players. I honestly believe that. But you got to get them there. And this year is about getting them there. It's about getting Ken Walker up to speed and looking like an elite player. It was about getting DK Metcalf signed long term, so he gets to hang out in Seattle and wait for the next. And it's also about getting yourself in a position to go get CJ Stroud or one of the other guys, right? I still think
Bryce Young or Johnson, the kid from Florida, just had a nice outing, and there's
Kentucky,
or the kid from USC had a great Williams game too. So
I don't know if he's draft eligible. I think he's got another year before he can play.
But there's 5 or 6 quarterbacks it looks like that are going to end up going in the first round. And when you take a look at the top 3
quarterback year,
plus you've got Will Anderson, the edge rusher from Georgia. I mean, there's a lot of players up there at the top this year. It's going to be a great draft at the top, like top 10 is going to be highly coveted. So the Seahawks having 2 first-round picks, 2 seconds plus future will give them all the ammunition that they need if they have a top 5, top 6 pick naturally to go in and manipulate where they need to be to get their guy. And so
because you might have a team like the Jets or the Jacksonville Jaguars that normally are like, oh, they're above you. You have to trade up in that spot because someone else will. But this might be the year where you don't, because they're going to stay to get that guy from Georgia, right? Because they've got their quarterback. What they need is an elite defensive player. And I don't know. I just think it's a good draft class. It's a good year to be bad. And Seattle picked the right year to do this.
Yeah. All right. Let's get out of here. So I had the graphic up for the YouTube viewers. If you're listening to the show as a audio podcast, I'll have it up on my Twitter account if you want to go peek at it. And yeah, it's not pretty. It's not great. It's not the thing that, you know, we wished for, but here we are. I think the team though has is doing things the right way. As
They
far
have
as
a plan.
building. Yeah.
And that's the key here is they've got a plan. They're letting the plan play out. They unloaded a lot of talent this last offseason, not just Wilson and Bobby Wagner, but even guys like Carlos Dunlap and, you know, other guys. They unloaded a lot of talent to get their salary cap position where they wanted. They manipulated the draft to get some really good players at key positions where they needed them.
Yeah. Moved on from Dwayne Brown and figured that out. So yeah, it was a hard thing to navigate, and they did really.
They did a good job, and they set themselves up to to really struggle this year, but then go get a quarterback and have an opportunity to have built their roster in a way where a year from now they're jumping from 4 to 5 wins to 10 to 11 wins. Yes. And that's where you want to be. And they get to do it in 1 year. I
think so. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at WCHawk. Sorry. You can find the show at Hawks Playbook, and SeahawksPlaybook.com is the website. You can also find us on your favorite podcast platforms and YouTube. Make sure you share it and subscribe. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk. Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.